Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where you bring us the stack, the articles, the research, the reports, and we jump in, cut through the noise, and pull out the knowledge nuggets that truly matter.
Exactly. We're sort of your guides through all that information out there, helping you unpack what's really essential and, connect the dots between things you might have otherwise missed.
And for this deep dive, you've handed us a summary, a rundown of global headlines from May 17th right through to the 23rd, 2025.
Yep.
Our mission today, pretty straightforward. Sift through these events, find those key insights, see how they maybe relate to each other, and really help you feel dialed in on what shaped the world this past week.
And the material you gave us, it's this report covering the top 10 global headlines. It gives us the quick summaries, but also some deeper analysis to chew on.
Right.
And it was, well, let's just say it was quite a week. Didn't exactly hold back. We've got major U.S. policy plays with international reach, ongoing conflicts simmering, and those moments where, tech, society, and the law kind of collide.
Okay, sounds like a lot to unpack. Let's get into it. And we're starting with something pretty jarring right in the U.S. Capitol.
Yeah, the report you provided kicks off with a genuinely shocking event in Washington, D.C. On May 22nd, 2 staff members from the Israeli embassy were killed, right outside the Capitol Jewish Museum.
And what jumps out immediately from the details here is the context. This wasn't random. It happened after an event, and it's being investigated straight away as a hate crime.
A hate crime.
Yeah. The report even notes the suspect could potentially face the death penalty.
Wow. The suspect is named as Elias Rodriguez, 31, from Chicago, charged with first-degree murder. But the detail in the report that really stopped me cold, it was what witnesses apparently heard Rodriguez shouting.
What was that?
I did it for Gaza and Free Palestine.
Yeah.
Just chilling.
Yeah, and there's a twist the report highlighted, too. Initially, in all the chaos, Rodriguez was actually mistaken for, an emotional witness.
Really?
Yeah, before they identified him as the shooter. It kind of underscores how sudden and shocking it all was. Absolutely. And the immediate fallout, that was significant too. According to the report, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu quickly ordered increased security for Israeli diplomatic staff everywhere.
Right, linking it directly to what he called rising anti-Semitism and anti-Israel incitement.
So the takeaway here, the analysis in your source material seems pretty clear on this.
It's a stark reality, isn't it? Global conflicts, like the Israel-Palestine war, they aren't just over there anymore. They're tragically showing up as, deadly domestic violence, hate crimes.
Right here.
Right here. Blurring those lines between foreign policy debates and safety, in our own cities, it forces these really tough questions about free speech versus hate crime and the real violent impact of international tensions playing out at home.
Okay, deep breath on that one. Let's pivot now from that tragic crime to some major domestic policy. Still in the U.S., but this one has huge financial implications. Your report highlights the passage of President Trump's big tax and spending bill.
Yes. The U.S. House just barely pushed this multi-trillion-dollar package through on May 22nd. And the number that really leaps off the page in the report, it's projected to add, wait for it, $3.8 trillion to the U.S. national debt.
$3.8 trillion. That's not exactly pocket change.
Not at all. And the report breaks down some key parts. It extends Trump's first-term tax cuts, throws billions more at defense spending, includes money for immigration enforcement, other priorities.
On specific things, too, right? Changes to the SALT deduction, that's the state and local tax cap.
Right. And something called the Harvard tax on big university endowments, plus specific rules for auto credits. It's a mixed bag.
But the report also stresses the uncertainty, doesn't it? Like what happens in the Senate.
Exactly. Its future there is murky, let's say. Significant changes are expected. The report specifically mentioned likely cuts to things like clean energy tax credits. That seems like a target.
And the report stated pretty bluntly, a direct consequence. Big businesses are benefiting from Trump's tax cuts.
Yeah. So if you step back and look at the bigger picture the report's painting, this bill is really a cornerstone of President Trump's domestic agenda.
Okay.
It really lays bare his economic and fiscal priorities. And it suggests maybe a willingness to trade off fiscal prudence, maybe even climate consensus, for these specific goals. It's a powerful signal about the potential direction of U.S. economic policy.
Speaking of President Trump, your report details a rather, let's call it an unusual diplomatic moment this past week.
Ah, you must mean the encounter with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa at the White House May 21st.
That's the one.
Yeah, the report flagged this as particularly tense.
I'll say. According to the material, President Trump made some, pretty inflammatory and frankly false claims during the meeting, specifically about white genocide and persecution of Africans in South Africa.
And the report noted he didn't just say it, he actually presented material. Played a video that the report explicitly says falsely showed roadside crosses as a graveyard.
Right. And your material fact-checked that right away,
Yeah.
citing the BBC, finding those claims clearly untrue. The crosses were, what, a temporary memorial.
Exactly. For victims of farm murders, not a permanent graveyard at all.
Mm-hmm.
Using a video like that in a high-level diplomatic meeting,
It's something.
it really shows the, let's say, creativity some leaders might employ in diplomacy these days. But the report did praise President Ramaphosa, said he maintained remarkable composure, stayed calm through what it called a carefully staged presentation.
Even managed a joke.
Yeah, apparently he quipped something like, "I don't have a plane I can give you," reacting to something Trump said. A bit of lightness, maybe.
Maybe needed it. So the big takeaway here, according to the report's analysis,
Yeah.
it's how this encounter really exemplifies the use of, well, potentially false or misleading information right at the highest levels of international relations.
And it also just underscores the deep sensitivity around South Africa's land reform policies, the racial dynamics there. It's a stark example of how leaders might use specific, sometimes inaccurate, narratives maybe for domestic political reasons.
Right. Potentially causing diplomatic friction.
Exactly. And highlighting this ongoing struggle against misinformation, even when it comes from official sources. It's a tough challenge.
Okay, let's shift gears completely now, from the White House to the courtroom. Specifically, that high-profile Diddy trial that's been going on. Your report highlighted some specific testimony this week.
Yes, Kid Cudi. He appeared as a witness in the trial, which is now, in its third week?
Yeah.
And his testimony, as detailed in your source material, included some pretty dramatic, very specific allegations.
He talked about his Porsche being firebombed.
Yes, and accused Diddy of breaking into his home.
Okay, and the context there.
Well, the report noted that Kid Cudi stated this all happened after he began a relationship with Diddy's ex-girlfriend.
Okay, that certainly adds a layer of intense personal drama to an already complex legal situation.
Definitely. And what this tells us, or what the report's analysis suggests, is how this kind of testimony detailing alleged violence, personal disputes, it just significantly cranks up the public interest.
In an already huge case.
Exactly. Involving a massive music figure, it could really have a substantial impact on public perception, maybe the defendant's reputation, kind of regardless of the actual legal outcome, you know?
All right, switching continents again. Your report covers a major social policy decision coming out of Europe. Denmark, specifically.
Correct. Denmark passed a law this week. They're raising the national retirement age. And get this. By 2040, it's going up to 70.
70, wow.
Yeah, that'll make it the highest retirement age in all of Europe.
Okay, who does that apply to?
The report specifies it's for citizens born after December 31st, 1970.
But it's not happening all at once.
No, it's gradual. The current age is 67. It's set to rise incrementally, 68 in 2030, 69 in 2035, and then hitting that 70 mark by 2040. The law passed pretty decisively, 81 to 21.
And the report explains the why behind this.
Yeah, there's a mechanism. Since 2006, Denmark has actually tied the retirement age to life expectancy. They review it every 5 years, so it's kind of an automatic adjustment.
Interesting.
And it really highlights a challenge that, let's be honest, many developed countries are facing. Aging populations, increasing pressure on state pension systems. You see other European nations raising their ages too, but Denmark's going the furthest here.
But your material also mentioned the pushback, right?
Oh, definitely. Blue-collar workers, unions, they're calling it unreasonable, completely unfair.
Why?
They're citing the physical demands of their jobs, basically saying they won't be able to work that long, and they just want time with their families, arguing it denies them a, quote, dignified elderly life.
Raises a fair point about whether one age fits all jobs.
It does. And the report mentioned a political nuance, too. The Prime Minister apparently stated that this principle of automatic increases based on life expectancy. It will eventually be renegotiated, so maybe not set in stone forever.
So the analysis in your report on this is pretty clear.
Yeah, even wealthy countries, with strong social safety nets, they're facing these universal pension pressures. It really just underscores this difficult balancing act governments face.
Financial sustainability versus...
Exactly. Versus what people feel is socially fair, the right to a decent retirement after working your whole life. It's a move other countries will definitely be watching. Could be a precedent, could be a warning sign.
Okay, moving back to those geopolitical flashpoints. Your report detailed some escalating tensions in a really strategic area, the South China Sea.
Yes. This week saw an actual physical incident, A collision between a Chinese Coast Guard ship and a Philippine government vessel near a disputed reef.
A collision. Okay, that's serious. And predictably, the blame game started instantly.
Oh, yeah. Your report used phrases like aggressive interference, illegal intrusion, both sides pointing fingers immediately.
The Philippines accused China of what? Dangerously grazing and water cannoning?
That's right. While China countered that the Philippine vessel was illegally intruding into waters they claim, same old story, but with impact.
But what's crucial here, the report mentions video evidence.
It does. Reportedly confirming aggressive Chinese maneuvers and showing damage to the Philippine ship, video can be pretty hard to argue with.
True. And the response from the Philippines.
Firm. According to the report, President Marcos Jr. issued a strong warning about threats to his country's sovereignty, drawing a line.
So what's the bigger consequence here? What's the significance?
Well, the report's analysis section on this is pretty direct. It calls this a dangerous escalation. It's moved beyond just, shouting matches.
To actual physical contact.
Right. Between official vessels in a critical waterway, that significantly raises the risk of a miscalculation, something going very wrong.
Yeah, you can see that.
It raises serious concerns for regional stability, freedom of navigation, and it could potentially draw in more international players, maybe even disrupt global trade. This situation feels like it's heating up, not cooling down.
Okay, back stateside now. Your report covered a local tragedy, but one with kind of a wider reach out of San Diego.
Yeah, a private plane crash. Happened in a residential neighborhood early morning, May 22nd. Just a truly awful accident.
The report described the scene. The plane hit power lines, crashed into a home, started a big fire, cars ignited.
Just devastating. And sadly, casualties on board. The report confirms at least 2 deaths, including a pretty well-known music agent, Dave Shapiro.
Oh, I recognize that name. Co-founder of Sound Talent Group.
That's him. Represented artists like Sum 41 Hanson. So his death gives this tragedy a more public face, especially in the music world. The report also noted there's a belief that Daniel Williams, former drummer for The Devil Wears Prada, was also on board.
Oh, wow.
Bringing the total number believed to be on the plane to 6.
That just adds another layer of lost people we'll connect with. And the damage on the ground sounds extensive, too.
Yeah, 1 house destroyed, 10 damaged, about 100 people evacuated, 8 injured on the ground. A real mess.
And the NTSD is investigating.
Of course. The National Transportation Safety Board, they're on it, standard procedure. The report notes that, tragedies like this, they always raise those tough questions.
About aviation safety.
Right. Standards, urban planning near airports, the potential for major collateral damage when crashes happen in populated areas. And yeah, when public figures are involved, it just adds another dimension to the public interest and the grieving.
All right, let's circle back to the U.S. political and legal scene. Your report covered a bit of a judicial showdown involving the Department of Education.
Yes, this was framed as a significant legal setback for the Trump administration. A federal judge actually blocked their efforts to, dismantle large parts of the department.
Dismantled.
Yeah, and ordered the reinstatement of hundreds of employees who had been fired.
So what was the administration trying to do exactly?
Their stated goal, according to the report, was essentially to gut the department, cut its staff by more than half, a major reduction.
And the ruling came from lawsuits.
Right, 2 separate suits, filed by a mix of school districts, a big teachers union, and a coalition of, I think, 21 Democratic attorneys general.
And their argument.
Their core argument, as the report details, was that Trump's plan wasn't just cuts, it was basically an illegal shutdown. It prevented the department from doing jobs Congress specifically told it to do.
Like what kind of jobs?
Things like supporting special education programs, processing student financial aid, enforcing crucial civil rights laws in schools. Pretty fundamental stuff that affects millions.
Absolutely. And the administration's response to the ruling.
The report notes they plan to appeal. They called the ruling, in their words, overreach by a far-left judge. So the fight continues.
So stepping back, what's the larger context here? What does this signify?
This legal battle, according to the analysis in your report, it really shines a light on that classic power struggle, right? Between the executive branch wanting to shrink bureaucracy.
And Congress, which has the power to create and define what these agencies do.
Exactly. It impacts vital services people rely on, and it highlights that ongoing tension, those checks and balances between the White House and the courts. Raises fundamental questions about the separation of powers, really.
Okay, another controversial policy move highlighted in your material, this one on immigration.
Yes, the Trump administration is trying again to terminate the Flores settlement agreement. This is a really long-standing policy, goes back to the 90s,
Right.
and it provides specific protections for immigrant children who are in federal custody.
Named after Jenny Flores,
Did.
right. Her lawsuit brought attention to abuse way back when.
That's the one. It led to this agreement, special monitoring requirements. The core protections are pretty critical. It generally limits child detention to 72 hours and sets standards for safe sanitary conditions. Basic stuff, you'd think.
So why does the administration want to end it? What's their justification in the report?
Their lawyers reportedly called the agreement an intrusive regime. They argue it has ossified, basically, frozen federal immigration policy, and in their view, actually led to increased immigration, essentially saying it ties their hands too much.
But there's strong opposition.
Oh, absolutely. The report makes that clear. Advocacy groups are gearing up to challenge this immediately. They argue passionately that the agreement is vital to protect vulnerable kids from potential abuse.
And that ending it would be.
An illegal step sacrificing accountability and human dignity is how the report quotes them. Strong words.
And the report mentioned this isn't the first time.
Key point. Trump's first administration tried this back in 2019, but they were blocked by a U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in 2020. So this is attempt number 2 after the courts already said no once.
So the report frames this how?
As a highly controversial issue, it sits right at that intersection of immigration enforcement, basic human rights, and established legal precedent. It has huge implications for vulnerable kids.
And the fact they're trying again.
Yeah, even after being judicially slapped down before, it really underscores a deep commitment to a stricter enforcement approach. Apparently, even if it means challenging established child protection standards, it's a big deal.
Finally, let's turn to a humanitarian crisis that, sadly, just keeps demanding global attention. Your report highlighted the dire situation in Gaza.
Yeah, the scene the report painted for May 22nd was just incredibly stark, heartbreaking, really. Desperate Palestinians were seen scrambling for the first freshly baked bread they'd apparently had in weeks.
Bread, just basic bread.
That single detail, the report noted, just powerfully illustrates the continuing severe humanitarian crisis there. It brings it right down to the most basic human needs.
And the report included some critical warnings, too.
It did. From the UN, things like a terrifying projection that 14,000 infants could die in days without immediate aid. Just unthinkable numbers.
And that quote.
Yeah, from Al Jazeera, a Gaza girl quoted saying she had stopped thinking about the future. Just crushing is the only word for it.
And what about aid getting in? The report mentioned some relaxation of the blockade.
Yeah, but despite that talk, the World Food Program was still reporting, as of then, that basically no aid was actually arriving. So the talk didn't match the reality on the ground, at least not yet.
And there were other related events mentioned.
A few. Israeli protesters reportedly trying to block aid trucks, Pope Leo calling for aid access, the BBC investigating an Israeli strike on the European hospital.
Which is one of the last functioning hospitals.
Exactly, one of the very few left. The report's conclusion on Gaza is just sobering. The situation remains dire, extreme shortages, food, water, medical supplies, widespread hunger, disease.
And the focus on bread just says it all.
It really underscores the level of deprivation, suggests a systemic failure, really, to ensure civilian well-being during this conflict. And this ongoing crisis, it just continues to draw international condemnation and these urgent calls for reliable, unhindered aid access.
So, looking across all these different stories from just one week, your report did a really good job, I thought, of pulling out some overarching global trends, some themes connecting these dots.
It did try to synthesize, yeah. Several themes definitely emerge when you look at these seemingly separate news items together. One really prominent thread is just how dominant U.S. domestic politics continues to be.
And how it keeps having these significant global effects.
Absolutely. Whether you're talking about the economic ripples from that huge tax bill, or the human rights dimensions tangled up in the immigration policy debates, or even those awkward diplomatic clashes we talked about.
Right.
It all shows that what happens inside the U.S. definitely doesn't just stay inside the U.S. anymore. It impacts the world, blurring those old lines between national and international interests.
That seems clearer than ever. What else?
Another clear theme the report highlighted is, well, the uncomfortable persistence of these geopolitical hotspots and humanitarian crises.
Yeah, we saw that. The D.C. shooting linked back to the Israel-Palestine conflict.
The escalating tensions in the South China Sea, the ongoing awful situation in Gaza. These aren't resolved conflicts. They just keep simmering, causing immense human suffering.
and signaling how fragile peace really is.
Exactly. And the constant need for international attention, maybe intervention, it's a tough picture.
And your report also pointed to the ways tech, society, and law keep sort of bumping up against each other.
Yeah, those intersections. You see it in the Diddy trial, celebrity culture meeting complex legal responsibility. The San Diego plane crash involves aviation tech, safety regulations, urban planning.
Even that brief mention about space weaponization.
Right, the hypothetical Golden Domes program linked to Trump in the source material. It hints at future challenges, the need for international law and new frontiers. It shows how developments in one area just quickly create challenges or opportunities in others. It's all interconnected.
A constantly shifting landscape, for sure.
And finally, a theme woven through several of these stories, the sheer challenge of misinformation and how critical fact-checking is now.
That incident with President Trump's white genocide claim.
Exactly. And the need for immediate fact-checking by groups like the BBC, it just underlines this ongoing struggle against false information, even when it comes from the very highest levels.
And it really reinforces how crucial credible news sources are, acting as that check, trying to maintain some integrity in this incredibly complex, just saturated information environment we all live in. So quite a week. In this deep dive, we've navigated through, well, everything from a tragic hate crime and celebrity legal drama to massive shifts in national tax policy, escalating international standoffs, and a humanitarian crisis unfolding in real time.
Yeah, by digging into the source material you provided, pulling out these specific details and trying to connect them across the week's headlines, our goal really was to help you see those broader patterns, understand why these individual events collectively matter on the global stage.
Hopefully, this deep dive has given you a clearer, maybe more connected understanding of what was undeniably a very busy week.
And, as you continue to process all this information, thinking about how incredibly fast news travels today, and misinformation too sometimes, and just how interconnected everything is. I mean, a local crime potentially tied to an international conflict, domestic economic policy sending ripples through global finance.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
How does it change things for us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does this increase in speed, this complexity, change our own responsibility as individuals to stay informed, yes, but also to think critically about the world unfolding around us? Definitely something to keep mulling over as you continue your own journey of learning.